I find it childish that more and more atheist fools are trying to discourage religious people by falsely separating religion from science. Their childish tactic is to send out a message that makes science contradictory to religion, as if no one in the field of science or interested in science could possibly have the mentality to also be religious. Atheists generally do a good job with their research as to whatever scientific topic they choose to talk about in their discouraging messages, that it makes it very easy to overlook their whole underlying statement that simply just says that you cannot believe in both science and religion. Now, of course, atheists don't come out and say this word for word because they know it's foolish and that it's just not true. However, they design their messages in such a way to try to leave religious people discouraged at the end. They also constantly use the advancement of technology to represent reason. This allows them to make the false claim that since religion has never advanced technology in any way, that it means religion cannot possibly be reasonable to mankind like technology is.
That was your brain on rationality. This is your brain on religion.
So could the mind of a religious person not as well work in the field of science or work with helping the advancement of technology? Or how about both? I think it's fair to say that a doctor, for example, works in the field of science, studying things such as illnesses, broken bones, blood work, diseases, and cancer, while they use technology to help study and treat these things. So how about Dr. Francis Collins? Dr. Collins is an American physician geneticist. He's also the former director of the National Human Genome Research Project and is now the director of America's National Institutes of Health. He's also an evangelical Christian and the author of the best-selling book called The Language of God, A Scientist Presents Evidence for Belief.
Well, I am a scientist. I've been fortunate to have the opportunity to lead this historic enterprise, to read out all the letters of the Human DNA Instruction Book, which is what the Human Genome Project did. And that's quite a milestone for humanity, having that information in front of us to begin to understand how life works and how we might use this for medical benefit. But I'm also a believer in God. I didn't get raised in that kind of a tradition, but actually in my 20s in medical school, encountering people who were facing death and seeing how their faith provided them with a strong rock of support, I got curious about what that was all about. And assuming that faith was all about emotional decisions and there was no rational basis to it, I figured I'd try to learn something about it. And to my surprise, after reading a number of authors who have put forward an intellectual basis for faith, particularly C.S. Lewis, I became convinced that the atheism that I had embraced was actually the least rational of all the choices, and that over a period of a couple of years, trying to learn more about what God would be like and ultimately discovering the historic person of Jesus Christ, I became a Christian. Now, some people say, oh, your brain must be exploding right now. You're a geneticist, you work on evolutionary features of our own DNA and that of other species. How do you put these things together? Do you have to compartmentalize them? Not at all. I find science is a way of exploring the natural world, but it has its limits. It can't answer some of those more profound questions like, why are we here? What's the meaning of life? Is there a God? Those are clearly not scientific questions, but they're awfully important. And perhaps there is an unfortunate rumor going around that the scientific worldview and the spiritual worldview have to be at loggerheads. I have not found that to be true in my own life. In fact, I can identify no conflict between what I know as a scientist, including all of the details of our own DNA sequence, and what I know about God, who created the universe, who put all of these opportunities in place and had a plan.
This evangelical Christian has had a history of discoveries with disease genes and has been described by the Endocrine Society as one of the most accomplished scientists of our time. Dr. Collins now serves as the director of the National Institutes of Health in Besna, Maryland. Before that, he was president of the BioLogos Foundation, in which he also founded. In 1970, Collins received his Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry from the University of Virginia. In 1974, he received a PhD in physical chemistry at Yale University. While he was there, he became interested in DNA and RNA. His interest changed and Collins decided to enroll in medical school at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And in 1977, Collins earned his MD. From 1978 to 1981, Dr. Collins served a residency and chief residency in internal medicine at North Carolina Memorial Hospital in Chapel Hill. And from 1981 to 1984, he was back at Yale, where he was named a fellow in human genetics at the medical school and developed different methods of crossing large stretches of DNA to identify disease genes. In 1984, Dr. Collins became a professor of internal medicine and human genetics at the University of Michigan. There he helped scientists to identify genes without knowing beforehand what the functional abnormality underlying the disease could be. And in 1989, Dr. Collins' research team identified the gene for cystic fibrosis. Dr. Collins' discovery has paved the way for the advancement of new discoveries. Such discovery shortly thereafter was isolating the genes for Huntington's disease, neurofibromatosis, multiple endocrine neoplasia type 1, and the M4 type of adult acute leukemia. In 1993, Dr. Collins became the director of the National Center for Human Genome Research, where he oversaw the International Human Genome Sequencing Consortium. There he started a collection of investigator-directed laboratories called the Division of Intramural Research that specializes in genome research and is one of America's first human genetics research centers. The Human Genome Project has had many accomplishments, including the announcement of a working draft of the human genome in 2000, and by 2003 finishing the sequence of all its 3 billion pairs. With accomplishments like these, Dr. Collins is confident in the chances of finding out about the hereditary contributors to common diseases, devoted to finding the genes contributed to adult-onset type 2 diabetes, and also interested in human genome research to benefit the health of people living in countries that are still developing. This evangelical Christian was elected into the Institute of Medicine and National Academy of Sciences, a Kilby International Awards recipient, and awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom and the National Medal of Science. In 2009, he was nominated by Barack Obama as the director of the National Institutes of Health, where he was unanimously confirmed by the Senate for his position. The Academic Journal of American Association of the Advancement of Science says that Dr. Francis Collins is a skilled administrator and excellent communicator. So why couldn't the mind of an individual be open and committed to both science and religion? In an article about Dr. Collins in 2009, the New York Times stated that many scientists regard outspoken religious commitment as a sign of mild dementia. So do you atheists believe that Dr. Collins suffers from mild dementia? Well, that's not stopping atheist Christopher Hitchens from seeking his help. Hitchens, who is the author of the book God Is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything, says that he's seeking help from Dr. Collins with a personalized treatment that should attack the primary site of his tumor. You see, Hitchens had his entire genetic makeup mapped, and this treatment is designed to target his own damaged DNA. Samples were taken from both Hitchens' tumor and healthy tissue, where 6 billion DNA matches were run on each to catalog any mutations found in the cancerous cells. And at the beginning of the year, they found a genetic mutation in the tumor, which they have a drug to treat. He now takes this pill once a day. Hitchens wrote the book God Is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything, but I don't think that Hitchens believes that Dr. Collins' mind has been poisoned by religion. And I don't think that Dr. Collins suffers from mild dementia like the New York Times suggests. I do understand that science and religion are two different things, but it's foolish for atheists to constantly try to emphasize them as contradictory to one another. This is what Dr. Collins' BioLogos Foundation was established for, to, quote, contribute to the public voice that represents the harmony of science and faith and address the escalating culture war between science and faith in the United States. With Dr. Collins' belief in theistic evolution, the BioLogos Foundation was designed to address the origins of the universe and life, while it emphasizes the compatibility of those scientific discoveries with the Christian faith in a world where atheists continue to emphasize a false contradiction.